Fortunately, the Milk by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Skottie Young. Page 48. Below me, on the plain, a number of brightly colored ponies were gathered, and when I picked up the emerald, one of them shouted up to me, "You must be the man without the milk. We have heard about you in our tales." "Why are you a pink pony with a pale blue star on the side?" I asked. "I know," said the pony with a sigh. "It's what everybody's wearing these days. Pale blue stars are so last year." Professor Stegg leaned over the side of the balloon basket. "Hurry up," he called. "If the volcano is going to go off, it will do it any moment." The volcano made a noise like a huge burp, and the middle of it collapsed into itself. "We thought it would do that," said the green pony with a sparkly mane. "There was a prophecy, I suppose," I said. "No, we are just very clever." All the ponies nodded. They were very clever ponies. "I'm so glad there were ponies," said my sister. I got back into the balloon basket. Professor Stegg unhooked the first emerald from his time machine and replaced it with one that I had just taken from the weathered face of Splod in the future. "Do not, whatever else you might do," said the professor, "touch those two stones together." "Why not?" "Because, according to my calculations, if the same object from two different times touches itself, one of the two things will happen. Either the universe will cease to exist, or three remarkable dwarfs will dance through the streets with flower pots on their heads." "That sounds astonishingly specific," I said. "I know, but it is science, and it is much more probable than that the universe will end." "I thought it would be," I said. "You looked so sad," Professor Stegg told me. "I am. It's the milk. My children are breakfastless." "The milk," said Professor Stegg. "Of course." And with that, Professor Stegg pressed the red button with his heavily armored tail. There was a zoom, a trop, and a thang, and we were hurtling through the cosmic void, and then it was dark. Very dark. "Oops," said Professor Stegg. "Overshot a little. Only by a week, though. Hold on." Professor Stegg leaned over the side of the basket. "Excuse me," he said. "Is there anyone around?" "Only me," said a very surprised-sounding voice from below. "The priest of Splod. Who is that up in the sky?" "Is that a bird?" "We do not sound like a bird." "I'm not a bird," said Professor Stegg. "I'm a marvelous yet mysterious and prophetic voice, telling you a mighty prophecy. So mighty that, very mighty indeed. Listen." "What a huge and good-looking, spiny-backed individual." "Monster," I told him. "The prophecy said monster." "Accompanied by a scrawny human being of revolting appearance," said Professor Stegg. That was not necessary. "Lands in a floaty ball person carrier. You must not sacrifice them. You must instead take them to the volcano and give them the Eye of Splod. And this shall be the way that shall know them. The human being will hold up some milk." "Is that the prophecy?" said the voice. "Yes." "Is there anything about crops in it?" "I'm afraid not." "Oh well, thank you anyway," prophetic and mysterious voices from the air. I pressed the red button. Daylight. We were in the middle of a very familiar volcanic eruption. "Quickly," I said, "give me the emerald." A little way away, I could see a balloon being blown through the sky, while fire and ash were swept around it by the wind. I could see me in the balloon, standing next to Professor Stegg with my mouth open. I looked miserable. Professor Stegg, my Professor Stegg, gave me the emerald. I raced down the rope ladder and placed the emerald back into the face's eye. Then, as the volcano stopped erupting, I looked around the milk. I knew it had landed on Splod's head when it fell. Fortunately, the milk had fallen into a small drift of volcanic ash and was unharmed. I picked it up, brushed it off, and started back up the balloon ladder. Professor Stegg pressed the button. The sky went dark. We were floating above a landscape of enormous towers and disquieting castles. It was not a friendly place. Bats flew across the sky in huge flocks, crowding out the waning moon. I don't like this place, I told the professor. I don't see why not, he said. It looks as if it would be very nice when the sun comes up. There was a loud flut, and where the bats had been fluttering, several pallid people were now standing. The man in front had a very bald head. They all had sharp teeth. "We are vampires," they said. "What is this? Who are you? Answer us, or we will dissect you." "I am Professor Steg," boomed the Stegosaurus. "This is my assistant. We are on an important mission. I am trying to get back to the present. My assistant is trying to get home to the future for breakfast." The word breakfast, all the vampires looked very excited. "We have not had our breakfast," they told us. "We normally have viggy worms with orange juice on them. Orange juice makes the worms even wiggier, like wandering spaghetti. But if we cannot eat worms, we will eat assistant or even roast professor." One of the vampires took out a fork and looked me up and down in a hungry sort of way. The baldest, most bulging-eyed, rattiest of the vampires said, "What is this box?" "It is my finest invention," began Professor Steg proudly, but I interrupted. "It is to keep sandwiches in," I said. "Sandwiches," said the vampire. "Sandwiches," I said with as much certainty as I could muster. We thought it was a time machine," said the head vampire with a sly, sharp smile, "and we could use it to invade the world." "Definitely sandwiches," I told him. "What happens if I press this button then?" said the lady vampire. She had long black hair that covered most of her face and peered out at the world with one suspicious eye. She pressed the button. We went forward 6 hours in time. "See," said the professor happily, "all this place needs to brighten it up is a little bit of sunshine." The head vampire said, "What?" and dissolved into a cloud of oily black smoke. So did all of his friends. "Yes," I said, "it is a nice place here after all, in the daylight." The professor tinkered with the jewels and the string and the buttons. Then he said, "I think I've got it properly fine-tuned now. This next press should bring you back to your own time, place, and breakfast." But before the tip of his tail could touch the button, a voice said, "I'll explain later. Fate of the world at stake." A hand grabbed, and the milk, which I had carried safely for so long, was gone. I turned in time to catch a glimpse of a fine-looking gentleman with his back to me, holding my milk, and then the hole in space through which he had reached was closed. "My milk," he said. He said he'd explain later, said the professor. I'd be inclined to believe him. The hole in space opened again. The voice shouted, "Catch!" and the milk came rocketing through. Fortunately, the milk struck me in the stomach, and in clutching my hands to my belly, I caught the milk. "There," said the professor. "Everything is back to normal." "He did say he'd explain later," I pointed out, "and that wasn't much of an explanation." "But it's not later yet," said Professor Steg. "It's still now. It won't be later until later." He was arranging pebbles and stones and strings on the top of the time machine box. "Final coordinates entered," he said, "and then it's off to your house for breakfast." "Does that mean that there is a stegosaurus in a hot air balloon outside?" I asked my dad.